Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to yet another uLaw webinar. In today's webinar, our topic is everything practice management. And I do want to iterate that this particular webinar and the topic has been approved for CPD credits, depending on the jurisdiction that you're joining us from. It's 1.5 hours of CPD professionalism credits offered by the LSUC. And it's 1 hour of professionalism credits by British Columbia. Okay, so I again want to iterate that this particular webinar on everything practice management would give you either 1.5 hours if you're listening in from Ontario, or it would provide you 1 hour for those friends joining us from British Columbia. And we're hoping to get this certified for our other friends from other provinces across Canada. But to everyone who's joining in today, in advance, happy Canada Day as we celebrate our 150 years of the country and a beautiful country it is. As I start letting people come in, I just want to iterate that highly recommend that you use the chat window towards the end of the session, where we want to leave about 5 to 10 minutes for collaboration as we try and engage our audience through Q&A. We've had a really good session the last time we did this particular topic with a lot of questions coming in. So as you listen in, please feel free to use the chat window, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions, but also have a dialogue going in, which is in many ways a great way of learning. Okay, so for the largest part, I'm going to be talking about and walking you through the different slides as we walk through Practice Management 101 and what CPD credits the LSUC has given us, or British Columbia, but we certainly encourage you to ask questions at the end of the session. Okay. And a quick housekeeping before I get started. Kindly do click on the join.me link. If you're listening in, please do click on the link for the video, and please dial in if you're already listening in. Computers are a great way of doing it, but if you do have a phone, we often find the audio quality being slightly better with an actual phone. And kindly do use the link provided in the chat window to mark your attendance. As this is accredited for CPD, we do keep a quick track of everyone who's joining us today. And the last thing, this would be recorded and will be available and made available to everyone who's joining us today. And that's why having that attendance filled out would give us the emails and the individuals who's joined in, and we'll be able to send you the link to the recorded video. Awesome. So as we start today's session on everything practice management, like every other uLaw webinar, we want to start with an agenda. And today's agenda for this particular webinar consists of the following topics. It pretty much covers the professional obligations covered under the practice management realm for legal professionals. And we've broken it down. So essentially what we've done is we've taken the guidelines that have been provided to you by the Law Society across multiple provinces, and we've kind of broken it down to kind of the top 7 areas of practice, if you will, or areas of topics, if you will, that we can subcategorize those other components. So purely in terms of practice management and touching upon the obligations that you have, we have these following 7 different subject matter topics. We start with kind of our first entry point or touch point that you have as a legal professional with your client, with the client intake, service, and communication. So we're going to talk about what are the processes that you want to keep in mind, what are the best practices that you want to keep in mind when you adhere to this client intake process, understanding who that client is, asking him the right questions, not too many questions, not too little, about the right questions that can help you determine how you can help that client, defining service level agreements, defining how you communicate with your customer. Those are going to be the top 3 areas that we're going to cover today. Okay. File management, a very, very important component. How do you manage your files? How do you chronologically order them? How do you have a process to easily retrieve files, both for spot audits, for your regular maintenance, for talking with your bookkeepers, and files could be of various different types. This could be files related to your business, related to your client, could be related to your accounting aspects of your business. So we're going to talk about file management in general and what are your obligations and what are the best practices that we can consider as we define those best practices for your individual firms. Moving along, we want to talk about financial management. It's obviously a fun fest for me to talk about financial management with legal professionals. It's always well received, and no pun intended. Okay, different obligations that you have around the financial management aspect of it. And if you are in the habit or if you're in the business of using trust accounting as a way that you accept retainers as part of your business practice, then we're going to cover the obligations that you have and how practice management overarches all of these components that helps you through these process and these obligations. We move along then to business management. Okay, so being a legal professional is not just about litigation or being who you are as a legal professional. In many cases, if you're a solo practitioner or part of a smaller law firm, it's also about managing your business. With solos being empowered today with the advent of technology and tools and other aspects. As we continue, we have a quick question about audio. I kindly suggest and request that you dial in using the phone number that has been provided. We certainly find that the audio quality is way better when you dial in, and you should have that within the calendar invitation that we sent you. Sorry about that. So business management is all about managing your business. So the legal firm is something, the service that you offer, the nature of that is of a legal aspect to the day-to-day life. But from a business standpoint, you're still managing numbers, you're still managing your HST account, you're still managing your profit and loss, you're still managing the revenue and the expenses that are day and day part and parcel of running that business, right? Professional management. Specifically for legal professionals, we want to talk about what are the obligations that you have as a legal professional in this country. What are the different components of those professional management? Being part of the CPD today, I often talk about it, being part of CPD sessions and taking that extra step towards learning and participating necessarily as part of this is a big first step as a legal professional, because you are required to fulfill those minimum requirements of CPD credits, be it professionalism or substantial. Again, you being part of today's session is a great first step. We're going to touch upon time management and personal management that kind of go hand in hand. How do you maximize your time for what you do and what you like to do best, and how do you take the remainder of the time to focus more on your family, on your personal aspects of life, and how do you balance that are two critical components that we're going to talk as the last two topics. And we'll probably do a slightly deeper dive into the matter management and the accounting aspects of a legal professional's life. Okay, so that's really the agenda that we've set up for today. Obviously, each of these subject matter have enough slides to substantiate what we're trying to get across. And again, having gone through this, we would sincerely appreciate your feedback and your involvement through using our chat window. So looking at our first slide, which was the topic, was about client intake, service, and communication. Okay, so let's kind of break it down one by one. One of the first steps that you as a legal professional conduct as part of your business or your first step into understanding your client is that client intake process. Again, with the advent of technology, that client intake process may just be a web form on your website. It could be a document that you use within your firm. or it could be a phone interview that you conduct with a potential prospective client that's just called you in. Okay? So there's many ways in which you can take that client intake in today's context. It could be a walk-in. So you want to keep in mind that a client intake is a very important first step in your life as a legal professional, and keep in mind different process that you want to build in, the different best practices that you want to build in within your firm so that you can always be on the top of your game and ensure that you're doing the right thing to intake enough information about that client and have a process to take that information fast. So you don't want to be scampering to take down notes on a paper. You want to look very professional, especially within this business. Professionalism and the first impression is, everything that the first impression is a big thing in this profession, as we've heard from our friends. In that client intake process, let's say you've defined how you go about the client intake, whether it's through a web, whether it's through the form that you have, or it's through that phone conversation or otherwise. The components that go in building that client intake form, the most significant one is a detailed recording of that conversation, okay, or that first consultation that you have with your prospective client. You want to make sure that you are recording each and every aspect of that particular conversation. The Law Society obviously has certain mandatory rules that govern the client intake process. For example, they definitely want you to capture first name, last name if it's an individual. If it's a corporation, it's a corporation name. Certainly, a communication address is a big component of the client intake. Physical address, emails, contact information, so phone number, etc. And then when you look at the different silos of practice, depending on the area of practice that you focus on, the client intake components or the information to be gathered may differ. Okay, so for a POA, you have certain components in addition that's being asked for. If it's an employment law client intake, there are other pieces of information that's asked for, and that each silo obviously has its own critical components. So ensuring based on that area of practice, you have a process to intake that client, and then you have a way or a process or an exercise, if you will, to take down a detailed recording of that information you need to capture. Now that you've captured that information of that prospective client, an immediate obligation now is around the conflict checking or the conflict screening, as we call it. Now that's essentially to ensure that you as the legal professional are well aware, you have all the information in front of you to make that informed decision whether you've come across this individual before. Would there be a conflict in representing this individual given the fact that I may have met with him for, let's say, a totally different matter? Okay, so it doesn't mean that because you've met or spoken to them or dealt with them, doesn't necessarily mean that there's a conflict. It may be so, but there are sometimes cases where you've had a conversation and he was just part of that, and in which case you make that judgment. But it's still very important that you record and ensure that you have that information, that there is a conflict involved or not. So you want to determine that, and then you deciding whether you want to matter that individual purely comes out of that information that you have. Bottom line is still the ability for you to conflict screen, and you want to keep in mind using the right tools with, again, legal tech riding a huge technology wave with technology tools and products, including legal accounting and practice management softwares, giving you the flexibility to store information and quickly do that conflict checking. You definitely want to take advantage of that. Okay? Now let's say you've gone through that process, you've taken the information, you've kind of assessed the conflict screening, if you will, and you've determined that it's pretty cool now to move forward and you want to matter this client or create a matter for this client. One of the fundamental steps that you want to take is determine the collateral for the fees. Okay, so what is the fee component? How do you plan on charging this particular client? How do I communicate the cost components of my service with my client. Each area of practice obviously has certain nuances that lead to certain types of fee structure. So the typical, the usual suspects, if you will, would be the billable time. So you're pretty much doing a time clock on each and every minute, second spent. That's one style of, you letting your client know that's how you would bill them. Another component that we're seeing quite a bit in today's world is a flat fee. So you're saying it's all in. This is my service, and this is what I can do for you, but it's a flat fee. Could vary from POA to family law to real estate to criminal. Then comes contingency fees. Okay, so again, a criminal law or employment law sometimes is a contingency fee where you tell your client that I've got your back. If we win the case for you, we're going to take a certain percentage of the amount of money that we can win for you. Okay, so determining what that fee structure should look like based on the client intake form, based on the client, his situation, and why he or she has met you to represent him or her is very critical. And if you are in the business of dealing with multiple areas of practice, it's obviously recommended that you beforehand have a process and documented process to define what that fee structure should look like. And it's important that you document it because today you're a solo practitioner, and you're going to grow into a legal firm that's then going to have colleagues, co-workers, administrative assistants. Once it's documented, it's just much more simpler and easier for all of them to absorb what that process should look like, because you don't want a disconnected process where each and every individual within a firm are following their own way of doing things, right? So documenting these obviously help bring that sanity within the firm. Now, let's say you've determined the fee structure. Almost the natural next step, you create the matter, making sure that it's the appropriate area of practice that it's being associated with. And then you talk to your client about, again, if you are in the business of doing retainers and dealing with trust money, because legal professionals could, it's a great habit to do it. It's fundamentally a great habit to do retainers and have a trust account, because you often hear about horror stories, and I've said this many times before, about legal professionals who go down that path. It's a bit of a leap of faith. They go down that path and put all that service effort in, and sometimes just come back short because the client's, either doesn't have the money, or is then he or she is nickeling and diming you, and you really don't get the entire amount that you would have ideally bargained for, right? So having the retainer really allows you to draw money and be confident about the service you're about to offer, and be confident that you're going to be paid for it. So let's assume that you do have that retainer component to your business. It's important that you have a retainer agreement with the client, well documented, clearly explaining what the process is going to look like, how much of a retainer you're going to ask them for, letting them know the rules that govern that, which means that you put in the effort, invoice the individual, and then you naturally will move that money from trust to your general account, right? So defining that, I also recommend that you talk about it with your clients so that a common man don't necessarily understand the components of trust in general and all of those things. It's always a great way to really get that elephant off the room by just explaining what that process is. Makes it very simple, prudent, and clarifies a lot of questions. Last but not the least, let's say you go through this process and you obviously come across these situations quite often. You've kind of discussed this with the client, or maybe you've gone up to a point where you somehow understand that this is truly not what you do. This is an area of practice that you're not good at, or it's not your natural instinct, or for any other reason the client were to not engage you. It's critically, equally important that you define that non-engagement and bring a logical closure to that exercise and that relationship. So your prospective client walked in, flirted with the idea of engaging you, gave you a lot of information, but then did not necessarily engage you, or you did not necessarily engage with them at the end of the day, you still want to logically close that conversation and that business relationship with a non-engagement letter that can outline the reasons why and everything that's happened between the morning they came in and the afternoon that you decided to not engage. Right? So it's equally important because, again, you don't want those individuals coming back saying that they had the hope that you would represent them. There was never a documented way of communicating that we had not engaged, right? So to avoid those circumstances, you certainly want to keep in mind as a big part of your client intake, service capacity and communication with your clients, that you're outlining and documenting in clear words these critical components of this particular service process. Okay, so just quickly reiterating it. Client comes in, you have a process to intake that client's information, whether it's through the web, through phone, in person, otherwise, through email, etc. You record, in a very as detailed as possible, especially in this area, the different pieces of information that you collect based on the area of practice, the consultations that you've had so far. Do a conflict screening to ensure that you have all the information you need about this individual. Determine that you're going to create a matter. Determine the collateral or the fees that you're going to charge them. Ensure that they're comfortable and they're well aware of that situation. Great idea to have trust accounts and retainers, because you're one of a few businesses or few areas or lines of businesses, if you will, that can accept money in advance before the work is done. So, and what you do is very critical. It's equally critical that you get paid for it. So, as much as possible, do exercise the retainer. And yes, if things don't necessarily fall in place, you still want to document the letter of non-engagement that outlines the reasons why. So, moving along, now that we've kind of spoken about the different steps in the process, let's maybe review a quick snapshot of the types of documents that the life cycle entails. Okay, so when through this life cycle of the client intake, service, and communication, here's a quick snapshot of some of the documents that you may have already heard of and you probably use day to day. I want you to take back from today's session that many of these things you probably know, but the more you reiterate these components, the more important and critical it is for you to reemphasize using everything that you're learned for. I'm sure you know about client intake. I'm sure you know about the different aspects we're talking today, but many times getting together, being part of the sessions, reiterating things that you know, allows you to go back that Monday morning and maybe do one quick checklist. Am I really doing all of this? And if you are doing it, how can you be better at it? And if you truly are better at it, then how do you sustain that level of quality assurance? Okay, that's what we'd love for you to take back from today's session. So talking about a snapshot of some of these documents that go through this life cycle, nature and scope of matter. You definitely want to, part of that client intake process, you want to understand, is this a POA, criminal, what area of practice, what is the scope of this particular matter, and what's the nature of this business, right? Define client responsibilities. Again, this could be as simple as correspond and communicate to me in clearly in a particular language, because we now see a lot of legal professionals provide multiple languages as a little bit of a niche. Could be other regional languages as Canada becomes more cosmopolitan by the day. This is a great service that you're able to provide, so you can communicate in certain local languages. But you want to make sure that you document it and let the client know the responsibilities they have. So if you've decided on a certain language, then you let them know that that's the language you're going to be using, and they shouldn't expect anything else. I will even take it to the point where a client responsibility is to pay you on time, right? So let's say you determine that it's a net 15 or 30, whatever is the comfort of your business. You determine that ensure that it's documented, but please do communicate to your client that it's their responsibility to pay you within those 30 days. And if they don't pay you, obviously, then you also let them know what the consequences are, right? You always want to define what the actual situation is and the consequence, like anything else in life. A very critical component is method and frequency of communication, okay? So with the advent of technology, with emails and electronic ways of communicating becoming a very standard thing in today's life, you definitely want to communicate to your client not only how often you communicate, could be daily, weekly, depending on the nature of business and the area of practice, but also how do you plan on communicating? What means should the client expect communication from your legal firm? Is this an email? Is this an email coming from an individual's ID? And this is where your professionalism can actually help you and how you decide to set up your firm. Do you want to have a personal email ID, or do you want to have a professional email ID like an info@legalfirm.com, or do you want to have this at brucewayne@hotmail.com? Okay, so these are some critical components for you to keep in mind. How often, what's the best method, and in every touch point, how can you exhibit your professionalism so that that client is well served, but that client now becomes a reference who's going to carry that torch and give it on to another client, and that's how you build your referral base and your customer base, right? Retainer agreements are one of the most important documents if you are into retainers and trust account. As I mentioned, this is where you're going to define the retainer agreements in terms of the fees. This is where you're going to define how much of retainer you've accepted and the process, the Law Society's guidelines, and how you actually retrieve money from retainer into general, defining all of that within these agreements, okay? And what do you charge your client? Is this a billable? Is this a flat fee? Is it a contingency? Is it a combination of all these things? This is a great way, this is a document where you want to outline and define all these boundaries and rules. Termination details of the retainer. Again, if for some reason this individual is not paying you on time, or if, let's say, his check bounced a couple of times, maybe you want to factor all of that. Certain things come through experience, certain aspects of running business and putting English words to mean certain things comes from speaking to people and being part of sessions like this, where it's a cohesive learning experience. Okay, so termination details could be for many factors, but you still want to factor it in the documentation that you provide your customers. Legal practitioner and client confidentiality. Okay, with technology being what it is, and it's an overused word called advent of technology, but it's true. You do have now the obligation as a legal professional to tell your client that if you plan on using email, here are some of the boundaries, here are some of the rules and regulations that govern it. You know, it is going to be on the cloud, because you don't run your own email servers. And that would be a bit scary if you did that. So, you know, if you're using Gmail or Yahoo, or if you're using Outlook, regardless of how professional it looks, behind the scenes, it's a cloud-based email server. You know, you want to let them know that your email and the correspondences, it's going to be encrypted, it's going to be available, but it's in the cloud. You're using legal accounting software in the cloud, such as uLaw. You want to let them know the boundaries and the rules and regulations. uLaw is 256-bit encrypted, bank-grade security. It's secure, but you still want to let them know that you are using that. Okay? If you're going to be collecting credit card, and you're going to let them know that I have a new way of accepting payments, and you can actually do that at your own time. It's all going to be part of that invoice that I send you, and it's electronic. Let them know what the boundaries and that client confidentiality is, because when you look at third-party credit card payment companies, make sure they're PCI compliant, because only they can store credit card information. If you're not PCI compliant, you're not allowed to store personal credit card information. Okay? And again, the risks associated with those methods of communication and those tools go along with it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's definitely a great idea to document and ensure it's clear. It's all, get the moose off the table with regards to anything and everything that's going to happen between you and your client through that matter life cycle. Okay? All right, so that's all I wanted to cover with regards to client intake, service, and communication. And we move along now to our second topic or agenda item, which is about file management. Okay? And we've broken down file management into subcategories as well. Different things that you want to keep in mind. Again, this is a reiteration. This is not rocket science. What we're talking about today is just ensuring or reassuring that what you know is right. And if you're not following some of these things, give it a try. And it's, you're just going to refine that process as you go along. First thing, have a checklist with regards to the incoming matters, right? So what is that checklist? You want to make sure that, all right, if it's a first thing I want to have is a client intake form that's filled out for my customer. Whether you do it or your admin does it, make sure there's always a client intake form, followed by a conflict screening report. What tells me that this is all the information I had about Bruce Wayne before after he's filled out that form. I've never met him before. I have no idea who this, and I've never come across him in my legal life. Making sure there's documentation about that, or otherwise, I know who Bruce Wayne is. I met him before, and but I still determined that there's no conflict, and hence I'm going to matter him. But having that conflict screening report is a big part of that file checklist. All the signed documents, the retainer agreements that become a component of that matter or that file. Do you have that? Okay. Do you have a conflict screening report, which is a law society report that you can then outline the components, why and how you determined the reason for taking Bruce Wayne's matter. If there were conflicts, no conflicts, did you refer them to someone else? Did you not take a retainer? All of that can be well defined. So having that is a great, having that checklist, right? All those different documents and those items that you need to check off to make sure that your file is complete. Keep that in mind. So that's a big part of that process in defining it. So we spoke about that checklist, confirmation of conflict check completion, right? Separate files for each respective matter. Now this is very interesting because it seems fairly simple. The Law Society does talk about it that always have a unique referenceable file number for each of your matters. But we often get asked this question about, now if I'm serving the same client, and we've seen this with some of our clients who've done manual processes in the past, or they never used a tool to manage their files. It was all about the, having folders within their laptops or Word documents and Excel sheets all over the place. And sometimes they forget how they've gone about numbering it because it's all manual and it's all in one person's mind. And often we've had this confusion when we migrate customers over into our product, or we've heard about this from other tools. It's the same client. Why do I need two file numbers, right? As simple as it may seem, that's the reality of some of the questions that we get asked. It's equally important that, let's say it's for Bruce Wayne, you may have retained Bruce Wayne for multiple areas of practice. One could be for a small claim matter. The other could have been actually for a real estate deal, right? So really depending whether it's on a fence issue or if it's a purchase of a condo, there could be two different files for the same individual Bruce Wayne. And it's very important those two different files have their own unique file numbering system. And you can define that numbering system. It could be first name, last name, initials. It could be the year, the month, and the file number, or with the initials of the individual client. Whatever that process is, you can define it, but please make sure that they're uniquely identified separate files, even if it's with the same client. Okay. Not only does it provide you with the sanity you need, but it also gives you the ability to quickly search and retrieve that information. And you can also classify these files, okay? Really depending on the nature of the file too, because a small claims matter might actually take a much faster life cycle to get closed, and you may then want to close that file compared to, let's say, a criminal matter for Bruce Wayne, which may actually take a long time, and we'll still keep it as an active file. But chronologically classifying them even within the same client gives you that comfort and the ease of retrieval that you need as a business owner. Or whether it's for audit purposes or just for your day-to-day sanity, you still need that. We spoke about the personal recording of client interactions. Sorry about that. We spoke about how through the client intake form, you're intaking all of the client information. Now I'm talking about when you talk about personal recording of client interactions, it's about the matter-related transactions, recording every aspect of those interactions, whether it's an initial consult meeting, whether it's a phone conversation that you're having with them, whether it's the in-person meeting at a courthouse. It's very important that you have a process to document, or what we call as docket, these pieces of information that invariably help you define the cost and the fee structure of that matter, right? So whether it's a flat fee structure or if it's a billable time, it's equally important that you document and docket that information as part of that file. Whether you take it on notes or you use an accounting or a legal practice management software to do it when it happens, please keep in mind that it's a process that's going to have to work for you. And then once you define it, make it simple enough that others in your firm can use it. If it's just yourself that's going to be using it, refine it so that you're maximizing your efficiencies. Bottom line, still record it. And we always believe in uLaw that if you have a process that you record anything that happens, as and when it happens, you're going to save yourself a lot of time when it comes to month-end, year-end, audit time, etc. Okay. So yeah, make sure that you're recording those transactions as and when they happen, and docket them. Proper organization through numeric and cross-indexing. So we touched upon it a little bit with the Bruce Wayne example. But what the cross-indexing means is having the ability for you to, let's say you've met Bruce Wayne for another matter. You met him as a witness. The fact that you now create a new file for Bruce Wayne, you should have the ability to understand when you do that conflict screening that you have come across Bruce Wayne in a totally different matter. Okay? And whether this is through having a strong memory or having the ability to go through manual files fast, or using technology, which is obviously the fastest way that you could accomplish this so that it saves you time. And it's also many times accurate. It's important that you build that process. It's important that you build that process, keeping in mind that there is going to be that need for you as a legal professional for cross-indexing. Okay, so if you've come across this client before, in many other businesses, it's okay, it's great, you know it, it's for revenue purposes. But in your industry, in the legal industry, it's, having that information is not just for revenue purposes, it's for conflict purposes too. So having an organization of, again, file numbers, individuals, and storing that information, keeping in mind that it's going to be cross-indexed at some point in time is very important, and it's critical. Okay? So when it comes to files, my top 3 rules have to be unique, so it's easily referenceable, even if it's for the same client and multiple matters for the same client. Ensure there's a checklist that you have defined so that you're checking them off to ensure the completedness of a certain file, and record them record dockets or information that you want to capture about that particular matter or file as and when it happens. keeping in mind that at some time cross-indexing is definitely going to happen for you as an individual. Okay. Now that we've spent the last 35 minutes talking about two topics, I want to move on to an interesting area, which is financial management. Financial management, both in terms of you as a legal professional, but also as a business owner. But we'll kind of touch first about the financial management aspects of you as a legal professional. Okay? We spoke about this. Proper fee scheduling of hourly rates, or however you define your fee structure, recording the billable time in timesheets, recording time, period, is a great first step in managing your finances. Okay? Ensuring that you have an accounting system, a legal accounting system even better, but an accounting system to begin with that can capture this time and give you the numbers that you don't need to manually crunch out. So reiterating, when you define that fee structure and when you define how you're going to go about charging the client, one common experience that I've seen as I speak with legal professionals and us helping with other clients too, we're also working with the Law Society now to determine how legal professionals often tend to lose money or leave money on the table through pro bono that they don't necessarily measure well. So in your profession, let me reiterate that. In your profession, whether consciously or subconsciously, if you're giving away money, whether that's pro bono or not being able to track down time, not recording it on time, there are many components to it, or it could be a mere fact where you're giving them a discount. There are many factors that determine why sometimes the financial management and finances in general are difficult to be managed. But it's equally important that you have a process that you can track it and measure it so that you can act upon it. Maybe not immediately, but certainly act upon it. Take a step back at the end of the week or a month or a quarter to then take corrective measures so that you can avoid that circumstance. And you can then evolve through that experience, but by understanding what that experience is about. And to understand it, you really need to track it and measure it. And for that, you need a process in play. Okay? Because if you don't have that by design, then you're just kind of moving along. So in the ability for you to identify pro bono hours, identify flat fees, and if it's a flat fee, you still want to determine how many hours did you actually put into that file. Okay, yes, it's a flat fee because you have to stay competitive and you need to run this business and pay your bills, etc. But if I were to really put this on a table and if I spend 5 hours on this file, but I'm only charging them $600, is it truly worth my time? Especially if I'm charging you $100 or $200 specifically by the hour. Okay? For you to make that decision to begin with, you need to be able to capture it. So again, having a legal accounting system by design helps you capture all that information, and that's one of the reasons why you should consider it. Prompt transmission and delivery of invoices to client. This is a second component. The first component really always talks about how you can docket your time, how much of money are you going to get paid, right? The second component talks about how do you ensure you get paid. One of the first steps of ensuring that you're getting paid is by delivering those invoices on a timely basis, okay, within the specific time, whatever you communicated within the client intake service and communication process, whatever you agreed upon with your client. Detailing the invoice, also the payment terms. Yes, you have it in your retainer agreement, but putting that net 30 at the bottom of your invoice goes a long way because it reiterates what has been discussed and documented, okay? And it definitely does not hurt to be as detailed as possible, outlining your invoice so that your customer doesn't come back to you with additional questions, because that's just adding more time into the billing cycle or the payment cycle or the day of sale. Okay, so the first thing is ensuring that you have a proper way of docketing the time, and ensuring how much money you're going to charge them. The second, obviously, is ensuring that once you've docketed the effort, that you're raising the invoices at the appropriate time, you're not losing time there, and delivering a detailed invoice so there's no questions. Systematic tracking of overpayments on accounts. There's two ways you can get that. One is tracking customers who often don't pay on time. Okay, so there's you probably need to have again a process and a mechanism by which you can address that situation. Maybe it's a a constant design, or if it's a constant pattern that you see in certain areas of practice. When someone engages you for a POA, it's simple. It's $200. People are paying you right on time, or maybe not, but maybe in a different silo of practice, it's by the pattern of the business itself, the nature of the beast itself, where people don't necessarily pay you on time. So keep that in mind when you design these different practices and processes for your firm. Recording of general accounts through general receipts and disbursement entries. Retainer is one aspect of it, but let's say you don't collect the retainer, and if it's just purely based on the general account, and for certain silos of practice, you probably then will have to pay out disbursements out of your own money, right? Let's say there's an application fee, there are other fees that are involved. If it's an all-encompassing fee structure, and you are actually paying for it in advance. And the last thing you want to know is not be able to track that, okay? If it's a manual process, then that's extra work for you anyways. So recording that and using a software to ensure that it's automated is going to help you down the lane. But recording it, period, is a very important step. And receipts. So, the application fee, obviously, you provide that receipt. You have all those different documents that support what you paid for. If it's, let's say, a travel mileage, you want to make sure that you're able to always have the receipt, the right receipts, the right times recorded. You also have apps today that can actually track the exact mileage that you've traveled when you're traveling by car or other means. Okay? So recording that is very critical. That will be my point 4 here. Maintaining your bank statements, checks, canceled checks especially, and deposit slips. These are some of the documents that sometimes randomly are asked in audits, but it's always a great habit to have these documents by design. Bank statements and books are obviously a mandatory requirement. Canceled checks. So let's say, certain checks, bounce checks, you want to make sure that you keep those available to you at all times. And deposit slips, receipts, these are all documents that you want to keep in mind as you consider financial management of your business. And make it a habit. If it's possible, every quarter, if not every month, to gauge your firm's health, whether it's yourself or your accountant or someone else, your friend, your father, your mom, whoever is helping you with this side of the business. Work with them, sit with them to understand where you're doing well, where you're not. Whether you're a seasoned legal professional or a solo practitioner who's just graduated and looking to start up, this becomes a very good habit. It's like flossing. It becomes a habit and it stays. And after the 21st day, it becomes a habit to hopefully stay for a long term, and it has both immediate and long-term benefits. Okay? And what are those financial statements? They're very simple. There are income expense statements, your profit and loss statements. Now, these statements provide you with a lot of deep insight. Income statement should necessarily tell you how much of money you've made, but also tell you where you made that money from. So if your criminal law business is doing amazingly well because 80% of your revenue in June came from that, then maybe you want to consider going down that path. If you do multiple areas of practice, you do POA and small claims, and you're really not doing that well in small claims, but you feel you're good at it, then maybe an insight or an outcome of that insight is you probably want to throw more marketing dollars into attracting small claims customers. Okay, but regardless, and if your expense, the same thing, the expense book. If you often find yourself with expenses, let's say your rent, other aspects of your office expenses are high, and if that's leading to a loss on a monthly basis, a great way to take corrective measures. Okay, but it all starts with that document that gives you that data and gives you that insight. So kind of moving along within financial management, just like how we looked at a quick snapshot at the different client intake documents, here's a quick snapshot of some of the financial management documents that you want to keep in mind. Ledgers, and again, these are audit compliance requirements too. So your client ledger, both your trust and your general, the trust receipts journal, trust disbursements journal. So these are disbursements that have been made out of your trust account directly, and that's possible. And you just have to define that well within the process, saying that, hey, I'm going to take that $1,000 retainer, but keep in mind that $75 application fee, the $200 court fee, all of that is coming out of directly my trust. But having that trust disbursement journal is important so that it can, marry with what you've basically signed up for. And the most important aspect of the almost last step on a monthly basis is the reconciliation. Okay, so it's comparing your bookkeeping software's numbers based on what you've told it with the actual live bank statements. Okay, so when you get that retainer in real life, you take that money and you put it in your bank. But if you've not told your bookkeeping software or any other process by which you track it, if you've not told yourself or that software that you actually have deposited it, then there is that, the comparison is a possibility because it's not going to align. It's not so much that those numbers need to match. It's equally important to define why they don't match if they don't match. Okay? So let's say there's a check that got deposited, it bounced, but it was recorded in the bookkeeping software, but it only bounced on the exact day when you're doing a reconciliation, and it does not reflect on your bank. Then that's what you have to indicate in your reconciliation report, that particular bounce check still did not clear my bank. Okay? So there's about 9 different documents, 7 of them financially involved in terms of your obligation and your audit reporting, the ledgers, both trust in general, the trust receipts journal, disbursements journal, and your reconciliation reports. So let's take a quick recap. It's just been me talking for a long time, and I hope I have not put you down to sleep. Today's topic on everything practice management, we decided we'll break it down into these core topics, and we've kind of covered our client intake, service, and communication, where you're defining how you go about that client intake, the different service level agreements that you have in play, and how you define the way you want to communicate with your customer, documenting it, getting it signed off. We spoke about file management, why it's very important for you to be able to manage and easily retrieve these files and have a structure and process in play so that you can define it, make them unique by design, even if it's for the same client, and have it easily available for you to search and retrieve. And we spoke now about the financial management aspects of it, the different documents that define it, the different characteristics that you need to keep in mind. All right. As you continue down the path of your financial management. And now let's move on to the business management with another 25 minutes still left, so we still have time to cover business management, professional time, and personal management. Okay. All right. So business management, it's pretty straightforward. There's not too convoluted with this topic. Apart from you being a legal professional who does legal work, you're also an owner of a business. Again, depending on your situation, if you're working at a law firm, then the owners of the law firm have this problem. If you're an employed, salaried legal professional, then this is good information to keep in mind. But if you're an owner, if you're a sole practitioner, and you own your own business, these are critical components that you probably deal with on a day-to-day basis. What are the core aspects of your business that you need to keep in mind? Use an efficient legal software, whether it's legal accounting, practice management, or otherwise. Have software that can help you. In today's world, however competitive you can be with regards to the work that you do, there are other areas of technology that can help you stay competitive. How soon you send that invoice, how convenient you make it for your customer, how branded that document is, all of that makes a very good impression. And with legal business, with referrals being a big part of legal business, having a software that can automate those goes a long way in not only you being efficient, your business being efficient, but also leaves with a good taste with all your customer experience. Okay? Security. So you want to keep in mind that in defining the software that you use, also keep in mind, because this is a sensitive area of practice that you're dealing with others' information, the security of the file maintenance and the regular backups and how you store it and where you store it is critically important. Often we get asked a question about where the cloud-based files are stored. You want to keep in mind that data, as far as possible, is within Canadian soil, if you're a Canadian professional, and the different types of security measures that cloud-based providers give you so that you can reassure your client about the safety and security of your file. With the advent of technology, with you being now the mobile legal professional, access to information is very critical. But equally critical is access to information from anywhere and at any time. Because the faster you can respond to questions, the better you are in terms of reacting to a situation, but being proactive to a situation. But again, as I said, leaving with a high level of customer service, which reaps many benefits. Okay, so you don't want to be that person who needs to be in the office to access to that information about that matter in today's context, in today's world. So having information tip of your mobile, with mobile phones, overshadowing the use of any other device, and it's only going to go up from now on. It's equally important you consider that you have the right process and the softwares, that if it's natively embedded in your mobile, that's great. If you have to do remote access in from your mobile to a PC that's in your office, and if that's how you roll, you still want to keep that in mind, that today's technology, you want to maximize the use of that technology. So ability to remotely access, and this is not just data with regards to legal accounting and a bit of practice management. These are simple things as having access to a mobile phone with a centralized voice message system that you can then access anywhere. You don't want a voice message. You don't have to deal with voice message systems on a landline anymore. You can, there are tools such as Ring Central that give you access. Vonage, great VoIP phone or voice over IP phone that gives you access to your voice messages right on your email. So if your client left you a voice message just this moment, you would get an email right away because you're not tuned into this webinar and did not pick up that phone. And then once this webinar is over, you go through that voice message right from your email and give them a call back. Okay? So business management is about keeping in mind all the expenses, the different aspects of the business that, and the different tools and the processes that you want to keep in mind when you start your business and start running it. And also keeping in mind to choose the right tools and the right processes so that you can be efficient and competitive and have that competitive edge in today's context. Okay. We spoke about business management. We're now going to cover professional obligations or the professional management aspect of that. And this really comes down to you being a legal professional. Okay, so different professions have their own set of rules that govern um, professional management. Doctors have that, nurses have that, dentists have that. So if you're a professional, uh, period, then there are different bodies that govern the management of that. For legal professionals, obviously, it's these critical four components. Completion of your required CPD hours. It's a mandatory requirement, as we said early on, and you participating today obviously is being very smart because you're now capturing 1.5 hours of CPD hours at no cost, and that's definitely very smart. But ensuring that that's accumulated to catch up with the 3 hours of professionalism hours and substantial hours that you need on an annual basis. So every year, obviously, you want to keep that you're doing the right thing. You're not scampering come December to catch up on CPD hours. So everyone who's joined in today, very smart. Membership of professional associations. It's definitely not a mandatory aspect of your business. It's not mandatory. No one's force-fitting you to do it. But participating and being a member of an accredited professional association gives you the sense of unity, gives you the sense of the power of being a team, and the opportunity for you to have a mind share with like-minded individuals who in many cases are in the same place, wearing your same context, having the right conversations to learn more about not only the industry, but about you as a business professional and how you can manage that, right? So in Ontario, in Canada, you have various membership associations, and definitely not going to name them, but there are various different associations by, the region that you live in, by the ethnicity that you're in, even comes down to, specific gender-based associations. Whatever is your comfort, obviously it's highly recommended that you participate in such associations, not just for the camaraderie of it, but for you to have that learning experience of what it is to be part of that unity and that membership group. Okay, and many times memberships also offer discounted rates for various aspects. So whether it's legal accounting software such as uLaw or other softwares, memberships can then find a way to have a discounted price, whether it's a better rate for your credit card payment, let's say from TD Canada Trust because you're part of a certain membership, or if it's DivorceMate that you're purchasing in bulk and it's a special discounted price for a certain membership. So there are advantages to it. In some cases, most cases, I think there's a fee that's associated with it as well, but it's money definitely well spent. So pick and choose the right one that resonates with who you are as an individual and as a legal professional. Yes, memberships are also based on the area of practice. Reviewing new legislation and case laws. And again, pertaining to the silos of practice, the overarching message here is always staying current. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're staying current, you're not outdated, you understand the laws, because we don't see them change often, like it's not on a daily basis, but you certainly want to be sharp and current and be abreast of the changes that are happening in your legal industry. Okay, so you seem smart, educated, and come across as knowledgeable. And last but not the least, most certainly reviewing the professional conduct guidelines. So you being a legal professional, it's definitely a power. You have that power to represent individuals or organizations in front of the eyes of the court, lay down your points. There are certain conduct guidelines that govern how you go about it, how you present yourself, whether you're representing individually or a legal firm. There are certain guidelines that govern that. Stay on top of that so you don't come short. Make that first impression. Have that great finish to who you are as a legal professional by kind of following these four components. Okay, so before I jump into kind kind of the last aspects of the slides shared today. This is a very, very open-ended. It's been spoken about by many individuals, so I'm not going to say something new that you don't already know. But our intent of putting time management as a very critical component is our experience these past 5 years. Depending on the area of practice, again, I think it's also the area of practice, but in general, legal professionals are scampering for time, right? You know that, we know it as well through our experience working with you. You're always scampering for time. There's always, 24 hours is not enough, or at least it seems that way. Again, if you're doing certain silos of practice where you're dealing with multiple files at the same time management becomes the most critical component from an operational standpoint. Okay, so here are our top 3 suggestions. Whether you do it manually or through a software, totally left to you. Software would be obviously a very smart way to do it. Maintaining a to-do list on a daily basis. Okay, might seem the smart thing to do. You already know this, the moot point. Regardless, we want to reiterate it, that it's still a great way to do is maintaining a to-do list. Now, if you can define that to-do list even better, when I say define it, if you can associate it with the matter, with the client, with the deadline, and color code it, make it available on your mobile phone, then it's notifying you. You don't want to miss court dates. You don't want to miss docketing time for a particular matter. You don't want to miss out invoicing a client for whom you've already finished docketing. There could be many components of that to-do list. Okay, that to-do list could also just be getting flowers for your partner for their birthday. So again, there's different components to time management, both legal and personal, but manage it through a task list or a to-do list. And then software is obviously with mobile phones. We're not in I don't want to say the year, but we're not in old school days where we don't have technology to help us. We do have it today. Many others are doing it, so you want to stay competitive, but you can do it too. As simple as this may seem, this is yet another time killer. Manage or focus on your active files. If you don't have a proper definition of whether a file is active, closed, you lose purpose in terms of the validation or the validity of that particular file. If you've not logically closed out that file, that's still sitting there and you don't know whether it's done or not, there's still money sitting, you certainly don't have an appreciation for it if you've not done the right thing. So as simple as it may seem, many of our legal friends, often tend not to do this, but always stay on top of the active files. That's what requires most of your attention. And if possible, have other different types of classifications, closed, archived. You could have your own definitions of that, but then defining it so that you're focusing on active files will save you that little bit of time that all adds up. Okay. The third component of time management, and this is to do a little bit about the financial management too, because time is money. And in this business of legal professionals, we spoke about this early. One of the critical components is that many times time is spent, but money is left on the table. Because if time is money, but you're spending the time, but you're not picking the dollars, that's a problem. So as critical time is, so is the money and the dollars that are associated with it. If it is a part of the design and part and parcel of that business, then at the least you need to be able to define it, track it, and measure it. We're working with a writer to write about how the Law Society can help legal professionals save on pro bono and lost time, or time that's docketed but not paid for. And one of the first factors that we spoke about that we do well, or any legal accounting will do well, is the ability to capture pro bono hours and tell you how much of pro bono hours have you actually spent, on whom have you spent this particular day, week, month, year, quarter, whatever, right? So this is a very critical component that we measured in speaking with our clients and in speaking with the industry leaders and others is many times time is money, especially for legal professionals. We spend the time, don't make the money. So capture it so that you can at least review it and then take the corrective measures. Because if you're leaving money all the time in that particular family or real estate matter, then over a period of time, if you're losing money, then you probably want to rethink or re-strategize a different area of practice that's more profitable. Because why do you run a business? Is to be profitable, right? So again, time management, manage a task list or a to-do list so that you're kind of checking it off every day for both personal as well as for matter, because they are going to coincide every day. Focus on your active files so that you have a purpose every day when you come into your office or legal office. And if time is money, do track the time that you spend and the money that you've not made so that you can take corrective measures. The last, topic or subtopic is about the personal management. There's a certain sense of accomplishment of being a legal professional, and whether it's a sense of pride for who you are and what you bring to the table, or if it's a certain pride that helps you, motivate you every day to wake up and do what you do, whether that's the ability to ensure that the innocent is not acquitted, or if it's a financial component, whatever that situation is, whatever it is that motivates you, it's important to hold on to it. It's important that you don't lose track of why you became a legal professional to begin with. Okay, it can be a very stressful life, right? Dealing with all the different moving targets that become a critical component, because each target is a critical component, and you don't have the time to breathe. You have to stay on top of everything, right, from different clients, to the different documents, invoicing them, docketing them on time, ensuring that you're not following up to get paid, visiting court visits. Okay, it's a never-ending day, but you want to always keep that fire burning that motivates you to get up. And how do you do that? Is by taking the time off to build on you as an individual. If you get overworked and overwhelmed in that world of legal business, many times it's actually led to adverse effects. Okay, so you really need to enjoy what you do, and hence different components of the time management, the financial management, are very critical and necessary to help you motivate yourself. Because if you're doing work in POA and you're really not making money out of it, and that's frustrating you, you want to measure that, and you want to react to it. Because we as human beings, one thing we do well is evolve, and we come what may. Life goes on, we evolve. So take that same concept into what you do for a living, is measuring what you're doing, if that's meaningful. You're liking it? Is it giving you satisfaction? Are you making money out of it? And how do I measure and understand these components? Okay? Am I spending too much money on the expenses that go in me traveling from one place to another, if that's part of your business? If growth is a very critical component, define what those success factors are, is the bottom line of this slide for being a legal professional. Why did you become one? Define that, and ensure that you have the ability to track and measure those different success factors across your practice. Okay? If you're the type of guy who really doesn't care for the finances aspect, it gives you the kick to just go represent an individual at court. You're truly into litigation. Measure that. Okay? So the number of cases won, or the types of cases that you've dealt with. The number of pro bono hours that you've provided. If you're a good Samaritan, and that's a big part of the motivational factor. Okay, so define what the success factors are. Define what keeps you happy. Because the more happy that you are, and I truly mean it. I think the definition is joy, not happiness, because pleasure is happiness too. But joy is truly the blissful feeling that keeps you motivated. Keep that alive and do whatever it takes to keep that alive so that every day you walk in refreshed, stress-free, and be ready to take all that moving target that you need to deal with. Okay? And help yourself by automating certain components of your business. Okay? We're not talking about artificial intelligence taking over the legal industry today. There's still talks about it, but it's not going to happen, at least for the next foreseeing future. You are still going to be at court. You're still going to be needed to do what you do best. But for certain areas of your practice, of your business, you can automate it. Use software that can automate it. Save time from mundane tasks and not having to deal with it manually, because all that time can accumulate for you to deal with family, your individual self. We often talk about the extracurricular activities that legal professionals do. The top three are jogging. A lot of our lawyer friends in the Bay Area do that, right? You have yoga, helps you meditate. Yoga helps you focus in the moment. So when you have multiple targets moving around, something like yoga, which is, regardless of religion, allows you to focus on that one particular matter that you need to deal with. And the third, obviously, is hitting the gym, because you're happy about who you are, you're fit, and gives you a certain sense of pride. Ensuring a proper work-life balance, dealing with stress management. We spoke about that. So again, save the time by using the softwares and the processes that can help save time, so that time is then put into a work-life balance for you to focus on other things that can rejuvenate you to come back the next day to focus on this ever so stressed workload. With another 13 minutes ahead, and me wanting to spend about 5 to 10 minutes for sure with Q&A, just some 4 points that we think would be key takeaways. Always keep in mind the total cost of ownership when you invest in the different automation tools that are out there that can save you this time and help you be more efficient. Total cost of ownership is definitely one. You want to keep in mind the overarching costs in dealing with that in the, let's say a scale of 3 to 5 years. What level of efficiencies can those tools bring to your practice? What are the areas where you actually require them? And how those tools and software can bring it. Very critical is, in doing that, how do I ensure compliance? Because that's a very critical component for you as a legal professional, is all those documentations. It can be the way you like it. It's got to be in a certain format that's mandated or recommended by your appropriate law societies. Okay, so ensuring that the tools and technologies allow you to be compliant is critically important. And we spoke about the mobile legal professional, staying competitive, having that edge, and the ability to practice anywhere. To be able to docket even when there's no internet, being at court, having your mobile phone to docket it, being able to take snapshots of receipts and scanning them so that you're efficient as a business owner. All those things are a possibility today, and you certainly should ride that technology wave. That's a big part of legal tech today. And I will then move on to calendarization. It's part of that time management, it's part of that practice management, but it's a critical component for you to manage your day-to-day. Keep in mind that tools, including practice management tools, provide you with the calendarization, provide you with a menu option to manage your time, manage your dockets, manage the court dates, manage your week, month, etc. You want to keep in mind as you move forward with being that mobile-friendly user, these calendars are sync-friendly. They should be able to synchronize it. It should not be a calendar that does not support certain types of phones. Keep in mind, always stay on top of your daily, weekly agendas, because that's, as I said, you rejuvenate yourself, but use that agenda view to really take a quick snapshot on that Sunday afternoon as to what your next week looks like. So with another 10 minutes left, I just have two more topics to cover, and then I'd like to open the floor for any Q&A and feedback. All right, so managing your practice's finances is probably the last slide that I want to focus on with regards to accounting, because there are many components that come as part of being a legal professional. One of them is being a business owner. The other is the need to manage trust accounting so that you can document it but also report it on a monthly basis, and you're certainly going to be audited within the first few years of your business, you being in business, by the Law Society. Okay? So when you talk about accounting, trust and general accounts, with the technology, keep in mind that an integrated accounting system, which deals with both business and your legal accounting, is critical, because that's going to give you a unified view of your business. It's going to give you the 360 view. Whether it's an individual software or whether it's a combination of softwares, you still want to define what those softwares are, what those processes are, who are the individuals. If you can afford to have individuals do this for you, then that's perfect too. Have the appropriate tools, processes, individuals that can give you the data and the insights about your business, as we spoke about, because that's critical to you measuring it and being able to take corrective measures and react to that data. And the third critical component about the accounting aspects is ensuring that along the way that it is compliant with the guidelines that are outlined by your jurisdictional law societies. With that, I would like to open up the floor for your contribution to today's session with the questions that you probably want to ask out of the session. And we do have a feedback form so that you can provide us insight to how this particular webinar can be better, because we're trying to give back to the legal society through this webinar. So I once again thank you for participating in today's session, and I kindly request you to participate in the last 5 to 10 minutes within our chat window. Our support staff are available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you very much. Okay, so here's the first question. Can you please take us through some of the compliance documents that you need for financial management? Okay. Okay, let's go back to that slide. So here it is. So we spoke about the financial management and the different documents that go behind the scenes. Have your ledgers. We spoke about this, the trust and general ledger, the trust receipt journals, the trust disbursement journal, the monthly trust comparisons, and most importantly, the reconciliation. I hope that answers the question. I'm actually happy to showcase all of that right within the context of it. Sometimes seeing is believing it. I think there's another quick question before I load up my different financial obligations. What are efficient, affordable marketing means? That's an interesting question. So obviously, if you're just starting off, you don't have references, so it's personal reference is one of the most common that I've seen. It's having most certainly a web presence. A website today is actually a given, but having a website that is simple, straightforward, and gets the point across, and having participating in events. And where the website helps is obviously if you can provide thought leadership around the area of practice that you focus on, then Google would, if someone's searching for, I need help with my, I don't know, with the small claims matter, Google would then start recommending those websites, those legal websites that have more thought leadership on those areas. Google AdWords is a great way where you could have Facebook ads for certain silos. I've seen Facebook being very successful for legal professionals. Obviously, the old school ways of being part of magazines and flyers is still out there. And as the support staff has indicated, a good starting point will also be defining a domain that resonates with your character, your brand. That it truly talks from the heart in terms of who you are and what you want to accomplish. I hope that answered that question. So going back to the previous question, which is about the financial management documents. So here you are. You have your client's trust, the general trust receipt, general receipt, the trust payments, and the general disbursements. Okay. Then you have your fee book or expense books. Your fee book is really a definition of all the fees that you receive from different clients. Expenses are obviously, it's not the expenses that you've had for the month. Trust reconciliation becomes that much more important because that's reconciling your bookkeeping numbers with your bank. Okay, another quick question I have is, can you shed some light on non-engagement? Okay. Typically what happens is when you have customers or prospective customers that, we spoke about this early on, who kind of flirt with the idea of engaging you, they provide you with all of the information that you've asked for, let's say in that client intake form, and they've taken it to the next step of, let's say, creating a matter. And at that time, let's say something happens where either you non-engage or they non-engage. There could be many reasons for non-engagement, right? One is maybe you don't agree with their payment terms that they want to negotiate. Maybe you only deal with billable time where they're asking for a flat rate. There could be many components that determine the outcome of a non-engagement. Regardless of what the situation is or the reason that leads to it, if non-engagement is the logical closure to that business relationship, you as a legal professional have the obligation to document and get it signed by your client to very explicitly dictate that you're non-engaging this client or the client's non-engaging you, and you're no more obligated to represent him, and you sign off on it, and you have your client sign off on it. And it's important because you don't want, if you don't have that, And if they've given you that information, their chances are, they didn't understand what legal rights they have, what legal rights you have over the data that you've captured on their behalf, and the fact that you've got all that information, does that empower you enough to represent them in court? Are you still going to do it or not? Right? So if you've decided to not work with them, it's in the best interest of especially you as a legal professional to provide that non-engagement letter. And there are many samples for non-engagement letters that can vary based on the area of practice. Another question, it's an interesting question. Why is analytics useful to my practice? Is it a waste of my time? To answer that question, we have to go back to what we spoke about in principle about the lack of time, the amount of stressful work that you have, and you needing to find those success factors that determine why you're a legal professional to begin with, right? And a business owner. And what analytics provide in general is insight to the data that you capture, okay? Analytics such as, where am I making my most money? Analytics such as, where am I spending a lot of my money on? Analytics such as, am I profitable this month? Who are my top paying clients? How many pro bono hours have I provided, categorized by area of practice, also by top clients? What does this data provide you? It provides you with the insight that you need to make informed decisions about your business. Okay? Is it a waste of time? So you wanting to put all the effort in to capture all of this data, doing it manually would definitely be a waste of time. Using software to help you do that for you would certainly be time and money well spent. Okay. And if that's the last question for the day, well, it is 4:32. I do thank you, everyone who joined us today for this webinar. I hope this is an informational session and your time well spent. We sincerely appreciate it if you could use the link that we've sent you to mark your attendance, and please do provide your feedback on the webinar and how it can be better. But very importantly, because this is a CPD webinar, kindly do use the link provided in the chat window to confirm your attendance to get those CPD hours. And thank you very much, and happy Canada Day, and have yourself a fantastic long weekend. Thank you.